All right, you guys, welcome to a new episode of Car Talk where we talk about everything in our scene, our industry, our culture, our community. I'm your host, Big Mike, right here with.
Ryan Bossery from Rywire.
And today we're going to talk about the evolution and influence of the media, right? Ryan brought this up, and I think that it's crucial. And I think it's a great kind of storyline to go over to lead us up to where we are today. So, I mean, take it away, Ryan.
So yeah, I was just talking to you about stuff, and I'm like, man, back in the day, right? The whole back in the day.
Yes.
So I was just thinking, like, kind of reminiscing, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, man, remember, like, you would, like, trying to think back as far as I could,
Yeah.
just media and, like, coming up in the this import car community,
Yeah.
and kind of how we, like, got to the places that we got, right?
Yes.
And one thing that I remember is prior to even, like, forums, it was just like, getting your car out there, driving your car, whether it be you're at a track day,
Okay.
or maybe you're at, like, a car meet of some sort.
Yeah.
You hear about something, the big IBOC meet or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like, this is many years ago, 15 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe you read about it in a magazine that there's going to be this big, car event. Like, oh,
Yes.
I'm prepping for it. I want to bring the car to the event. And I remember just, like, going to one of these kind of events,
Yes.
and then you, like, talking to people that you haven't seen in a year, or
Yeah.
maybe, or just friends, and you see a guy with a huge camera, okay?
Right.
And you're like, huh, I wonder, that's he's official.
Right, because
But 15
not
years
everyone
ago,
was walking around with cameras. If
right.
somebody was walking around with like a media stuff and a bag and a camera, you were like, "Oh shit!"
Like,
you know?
oh, what's going on? What's that
Yes.
guy shooting for,
Exactly.
right? So I just remember, kind of like, you had your car parked, and then you kind of, like, notice the person, like, oh, like, I don't really know who that is.
Mhm.
Maybe a name on a shirt, maybe there's not, right?
Right.
You're like, you see him, like, kind of shooting around at stuff and getting down and shooting. Oh, that's a really nice car. He's, shooting it, and maybe he'll go up to yours, and maybe he'll just talk to you, say he likes something or
Yeah.
whatever, and then maybe take a picture. Like, hey, man, what is this for?
Sure.
Oh, it's for XYZ magazine.
Yes.
Or maybe it's event coverage for something.
Something. Yeah.
TV commercial, or who
Mhm.
knows, right? And then, they kind of talk to the person. Okay, cool. So, like, when is this coming out?
Right.
And it would be like, oh, well, maybe, in 5 or 6 months it'll be,
Yeah. Or
it
weeks
was like,
or something.
it would always be like a kind of a long drawn thing, and you're like, wow. And then if you're real lucky, they may go, hey, can I take a couple shots of your car?
Yes.
Sure.
Mhm.
Like, go ahead, take some pictures, ask you a couple questions about it.
Right.
And then maybe they go, here's my card.
Yes.
And you get your little card, right? Why don't you write me an email?
Write me an email, and that's when it was just like,
Damn,
oh, I need to make
email.
an email account.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh shit, I don't have
Like,
an
you're
email.
young. You're like,
I
do I
need-
do it MSN or AOL.com?
Do I like make it like car style?
Right.
Like, maybe that, like, Stunna Boy 6969 needs to kind of go over on the side, and we need to do something more professional, like, like 89,
Stunna Boy 6969.
like 89 CRX, like,
Yeah.
SI.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
like, I remember mine back in the day. It was my little handle on one of the first sites I ever went on was dropped CRX SI, because I was like, I got a CRX SI.
And it's dropped.
I slammed it like an inch. It's,
To this day, when people join my live streams on IG,
Yeah.
I always like try to read and sound out their name,
Yeah.
their screen name, and I'm just like, yeah, I've got nothing. What does all that mean? What do those numbers mean? And I'm not clowning.
oh,
like,
that
I
was
just
the
want to
year
know.
that was the year that I
I was
made
born, the year I
born-
graduated from high school,
the year
of
that
my
I
car.
got my account.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly.
Like, I think my girl's, like, one of her, like, emails is like, 19, like, 89 or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Something 1989. Like, what's 1989? Like,
Yeah.
that's not the year of your birthday. That's not,
Yeah.
oh, it was just the year I
Made the
I
account.
made the account. And, like, a lot of people are like that. Like, oh, it's the year that I made the account. Like, what? But wouldn't you have enough forethought to, like, not do it the year? Anyway,
No, we did it.
we're getting way off track here. So, so basically, like, the next step is, like, you get the card, and then, like, oh, it's like a first date. Like, do I call? Do I, like, reach out to him,
Or
or
I don't want to do it too quickly.
yeah, you gotta like, what's
Yeah.
the safe time to like wait to hit up this photographer, and like, oh yeah, thanks for call, like, thanks for reaching out. Let's set up a private
Sure.
shoot.
Sure.
And you're like, oh whoa, a private shoot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And okay, this month doesn't work, but how about next month? Okay, cool. So maybe you gotta drive somewhere. Dude, the first time that I was in my car was a actual car that I owned was in a magazine. I had to drive from Northern California to Southern California just for the shoot,
To get shot.
just for some pictures.
Yes.
And there was no 100% validation that I was going to even be in the magazine
Right.
or nothing. It
Right.
was just like, let's take some pictures.
Yes. Yes.
Shit, okay, well, I'm gonna make this happen, right?
Yeah.
Drive, you drive to location. Maybe the photographer has a place in mind that he
Yeah.
likes to shoot at. Certain kind of a background, whatever, make your car look better than it is. Maybe the color of your car would contrast whatever he's trying to
Yeah,
shoot,
yeah.
right? So then you get a shot done. Like, all right, cool. Is that it? That's it.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, cool. Like,
Well,
what's gonna happen?
The thing that I think is really cool about that, and to kind of tie into this era, since we're talking about the evolution and the influence, it's like even before the way you're talking about it, but in that same era, I remember going to the car show, like the hot import days, the hot import nights.
Sure.
Well, even before Nice's was Chinatown show off. Remember that?
Yeah.
And even before that, we're talking about like import show off, like Ken Miyoshi stuff.
Sure.
And so before I had a car there, I was a kid
You were
going.
attending, yeah.
And so the influence, I would see the same thing you saw, the dude walking with like the import models, and he had all the bags and the cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
But when they were shooting a car, you gravitated to the car that they were shooting.
Yeah, because
I
you're
mean,
like,
why are they shooting
why
that?
is this one?
Right. So it's no different than right now when you're at an event and you see a bunch of people crowding around a car. You're like, oh, like what's happening? And so I used to do the same thing, you guys. I would look over and be like, why are they shooting this model and or this car? And so that in and of itself is influence, because for whatever reason you may have just walked by that car or that aisle and it didn't necessarily make you stop any longer than all the other ones. But
Sure.
when people stop or a camera comes out, there's a part of you that wonders why. And so you look, and perhaps you look longer, or you look and see something that
Harder,
you missed.
more
You
detail.
look more detail, you look harder, and then you are on, even on an unconscious level, you are then influenced by the individual who is taking photos of it that makes you want to look, and then you're going to look at the car longer and be influenced by that. So I think some of these like fundamental human characteristics have always been there. But like what he was saying, then you like look at if the person ends up taking a photo of your car, then you do the whole business card thing, and you do the email thing, and next thing you know, a magazine that you subscribe to, or maybe don't, but you are now more interested in, you go to the magazine aisle when the magazine aisles used to exist, and you would now start to pay attention to that because you met, John Doe, who gave you the business card that is shooting for it. And you get to this point now where one day you go to the magazine aisle, or it comes in the mail 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah, it could even be a year. In some cases,
Yes.
like, you and I both know about this, like the queue
Yeah.
of all these cars
Yes.
that they've already shot. They're in the
Yes.
bank,
They're in the queue of things to be released.
and it could be all of a sudden surprise you a year later.
Yes,
your car's in
months
the-
later or years later, you grab a magazine out of your mailbox or at the store, and it's like you're like leafing through it to see if yours is even in there, because this is before we knew that we would ever be blessed enough to make covers. Like, you don't know, right? You're just
Dude,
like,
I think I had a car that was like event coverage, and I was like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
like I want to circle it.
You're at the back of the thing, event coverage, and they took one of those squares,
Yeah.
those little images around like the one paragraph, the 3 paragraphs, half page they gave it was like your car or the front end of your car in line, and you
Yeah.
were like, oh, I made it, And that's the really cool like evolution of things, because back then you had this like waiting game, right? And things have really changed, right? So you had in the mail, and then after that it ended up turning into the evolution of forums,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And forums were, I mean, you want to talk about faster. I mean, hosting photos on PhotoBucket,
Right.
right? Or people had their Flickrs and their Tumblrs, right?
Do you remember JSJ Brothers?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, in the Bay Area there were these two brothers, and they like would go to just
Like everything.
an event,
Yeah.
even if it was just a little tiny show off meet,
Yeah, little
or
car
a huge,
gathering.
the biggest,
Yep.
Week Fest or something like that. They would be there, and then they would just every single car, every single car, front end, side end, whatever, every single car,
Every single car. And
then
all of us went to
and then they would
JSJBrothers.
and then they
dot
would.
com.
I don't even know if they would edit the pictures, like
I don't know either.
and then they would just throw them up on their little website. I think it was just a website, right? It wasn't like in blog form.
No,
or
no, no.
anything.
I think it was
This
just
was
a site.
before like a
Was it
legit
John?
blog.
John's one of the brothers. John
was
San
one
Juan,
of-
right?
Yeah.
JSJ. Shout out to John and all the brothers, man, because they were at everything.
Yeah.
And it was before Week Fest. This is when it was Jay's gathering.
Jay's Gathering, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, before Week Fest, yeah.
And it was just that's an example, like that's NorCal. In SoCal, you had Rodrez.
Right, yeah.
Right, Rodrez.
Rodrez shot.
Rodrez shot. So those of you guys who are on Honda Tech and things like that, you're gonna be able to remember that Rodrez shot. Like when he established himself, and when he did, he got to this point where people were like, "Fuck!" Like I want to see a Rodrez shot. A feature in the forums. And even Joey from the Chronicles, I think in the beginning he was using one of Loy's cameras.
Yeah.
Right?
He was or at least borrowing
but
one of
but
Loy's
but the body, it was a
yeah.
DSLR, and Joey would shoot. And I mean, these were the people who just wanted to shoot, and they were doing this, and look at what it evolved into for people, right? Rogers runs, well, now Super Street, Honda Tuning, Import Tuner, everything. He was just a contributing photographer.
But before
then
that,
he became editor.
He was the editor
of Honda Tuning. And now, because of the evolution of things, he runs the whole group effectively, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing, because the evolution of it as it turned into digital, right? Well, and not just the photos, but we're talking about it, the forums and magazines. So magazines weren't even phasing out yet.
No,
forums phased in.
Yeah, so there was two things.
There were two things.
And neither one of them took away, I don't think.
Not in the beginning.
Was just
magazines still had the prestige.
Yeah, at that point it was still like the magazine was the goal, like to see the best, to have the best exposure. And then like online was like almost like a filler, because you could get that. You were starting to be able to get that near instant gratification.
Yes.
Like you're really waiting for the event coverage, let's just call it this, because we've been talking about that, of XYZ magazine. That was like the primo. I want to see what's shot and who they feature from that.
Yeah.
But then you're online and you're looking at Rodrez, JSJ, eventually like Sticky Diljo, but maybe we're not quite there yet.
Not quite there yet, yeah.
That would be like your near instant gratification, because these guys would kind of rush home and edit some pictures and throw them up on their site.
Yeah.
And they're kind of the first to it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really crazy thing, because that's the evolution and the influence, because the person who, however they had access to that camera, the person who had access to a computer, because you had people who might have been at more events, but they didn't have a camera, or they had a camera, but they had like the worst internet connection. So even if they went straight home, it would take like 17 hours to upload 100 photos.
Yeah, it'd be like you'd have to have so much dedication and time, and if you're dialing up and your shit drops and you're like,
someone calls in the middle of the upload, it ruins it. For those that know about dial-up. But I mean, it was just an interesting thing, because I think it's important to note that when forums and the internet came in, they didn't take away initially from the prestige and the aspiration to make it into a print magazine.
Yeah.
That up until only recently stopped being the pinnacle. And I think later on, as we kind of go through the timeline of the evolution, we can kind of see how it's like making its place back. But when we come back, we'll really delve into the age of online forums. All right, we'll see you guys in a moment.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan from Rywire here, and today I have something really, really cool to show you. What I want to show you guys is that nothing that I'm doing here is so far-fetched that you guys can't do it at home. We don't have any CNC, there's no 5-axis machine here. I'm literally just using my brain and hand tools to get a really, really cool project done. Even in the most basic conditions, a beautiful outcome can arise.
All right, you guys, welcome back. In our first segment, we were going over the evolution and the influence of media starting from the era before, where you just went to an event and you saw someone with the camera, some media guy got a card, and next thing your vehicle or your friends or something, just the event that you were at, to know that when you see it in the magazine, you were like, dude, I was there. That's where it all kind of really sort of came to pass, right? And even before that, I mean, somebody had like a point and shoot. Somebody had a film camera,
Yeah.
and they just were going,
And a lot of people were like, you'd see people shooting stuff, and it's just for their personal,
just to have it,
to
dude, to put up on their closet door,
Yeah.
on the wall. That was a really cool thing. And then, as the internet came to be, even before there was a good connection, when it was still dial-up, I mean, the people who were in school had like T1 connections, and
Yeah.
somebody's mom and dad were baller and had something other than dial-up. But the forums, right? The creation of forums is really an era that many people, I genuinely feel bad for a younger generation, solely because there was a lot of fun. I mean, magazines, you were under the influence of that particular company's perspective, what they shot,
what they might have liked,
what
or
they
what
might
they
have liked,
might have not liked.
If they went to an event that was more about, the headlight retrofits and front end conversions and
Lamborghini
body
doors.
kits. That's what you were going to see more of if you subscribed to that magazine. And when you had forums, it started to create this amazing forum for people to put out their interests,
and they would be broken down in a
yes,
way
it would be
where you
diversified.
could really like get to what there could be something that says body kits and wings, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, I want to see all this
Exterior, interior.
Yeah.
Like Honda Tech, it had like ice,
Yeah,
like audio and
sure,
ice.
audio.
And then you had
Technical.
yes, off topic and not safe for work, and food and just everything, right? And the thing that I found that was the most amazing about forums wasn't just the diversity, it was the diversity of the people, because
Mhm.
now you are communicating with someone from anywhere in the world. I mean, the internet, it's so normal now that it's kind of funny probably for people to hear that, but the creation of the internet is still the craziest, I think, the creation of mankind. I still think it is, because in a forum, whenever you had time to log on, however you did this, whether you were at school or at I don't know where people did, had it back then.
Library, dude.
The library of school, that's where I went. I didn't
Yeah.
have a computer at home. So you would there would be someone from this country, from that state, from that city, and you guys would all be talking to each other
Mm-hmm.
on the forum. And then it wasn't just about cars, because there was the off topic rants and raves, scammers. So you started to have these threads which helped to put out the names of people who may have scammed someone, or shops.
Even like that goes hand in hand with like the first sales stuff.
Yes.
Now you have finally the ability to like trade a car part with somebody on the other side of the world.
On the other side of the world.
Because before that, that's why like kind of when the Japanese thing was so crazy, like how did you even get these parts from Japan?
Yes.
And then it's like, well, you got a forum, and then now you got another, maybe somebody from Japan or somebody that's stationed in Japan.
Yes, a lot of military guys.
A lot of military guys, and they're just like, they want to make a quick buck, but you just want to get that part.
Yes.
So like the forums really gave the ability to communicate with everybody in the entire world, so you would instantly be able to get that rare piece to set you apart or something like that.
Yeah, and that was the creation of social media, really, because it wasn't a designated body or a journalistic title. It was anybody can create their thread. The forum gave the ability for the entire social circle to present and subsequently influence each other, rather than necessarily having to be guided. And I think that was the beginning of the greatest gift, and then consequently curse, because as we get to a more present day, you have the greatest source of information and misinformation to ever be created, because now, because anybody can say whatever they want and post whatever they want, you can also say and post shit out of context, no context, and people can take from that what they want. But in the golden era of the forums, you had the ability to communicate, purchase parts, sell parts, or just learn from people who live in a culture or a region, and it was invaluable. You had people who were like the hybrids forum, right? People who were very much into that. And then when you had Honda Acura Net, Honda Tech, and then it kept getting broken down, jdmcivic.com, civichatchback.com,
Yeah, then
right?
you just
Yes,
yeah,
and
tiny little categories.
and then people who really only wanted to be about that world could go and like nerd out with each other, and or people who um wanted to be social, but if they didn't have their own car and couldn't go to any of these meets, or they lived in Timbuktu, they could be a part of, in that way,
Yeah,
what was going on in another place.
that's an interesting point because like if you're in person with the cars,
Yeah,
you kind of have to like have a car. I mean, you don't have to, but
sure.
it definitely would bring everybody together at that point. But if you're on a forum, you don't necessarily have to have that car. You could aspire to have that car, and you're learning about that car, and you're just as involved in the community as the next person that maybe
Yes.
has a car, and not only just a car, but a built up version of what
Right,
you want.
right. I think that was an amazing thing for people to be able to positively
Mm-hmm.
influence each other,
Yeah.
right? Because in the beginning, I think it was almost entirely positive. Like, there were the trolls. They've always been, that's a human thing, right? But they were few and far between. There were people were creating these threads like DIYs and frequently answered questions, do it yourselves, FAQs, how to's. And so it started to create this thing where somebody was like, I want to do this um timing belt thread, for people, so they don't have to go pay 5, 6, 700 bucks, which now it's probably more like 1,500 bucks if you go to a shop.
Maybe.
But someone would just like take pictures, because back then people didn't even have cell phones, you guys. This is not cell phones. This is, someone had to have the money and the want to go have a camera and take photos, and people would do this and make these like detailed threads where people could totally learn how to work on a car, just reading and going picture by picture. Oh, like they went from this to this, and I don't know what happened in between. But
And
that's,
then you can ask a question.
you could ask a
And
question.
then somebody could guide you.
Yes.
And then at the beginning it was just like everybody was really really focused on trying to help everyone.
Everyone was wanting to help.
And there
each
became
other.
so much information that I remember the whole like just search, because the information's already there, maybe 10 times over.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because even back then you had the people who would be like, don't be a dick, just answer the question. And then there would be the people who would be like, but the question's been
already
answered. They just need to look. And it was already that. And that's kind of where we are now. People will hop on and just call a shop like Ryan's or DM me and be like, where do I get this? How do I do this? And it's like, you have to find that balance between the entire answer to your question, and every accessory question is already there. In fact, it's probably on his website, or it's probably in a post of mine, but because it's instant, right? Just answer me real quick. And it's just like, so I kind of understood that, but the idea was everyone wanted to help each other. So the moderators and people made suggestions for them to put the stickies. So when you went to a forum, it was at the top, there was like 5 stickies, and you clicked on it and it would just open up, and frequently asked questions, and almost every question that most people would have, the newbies at least, it was already answered in a fairly organized fashion. And then the DIYs. So if a question was, hey, can anyone help me, I don't know, change my transmission, and be like, oh, well, we have that. You got to go to the frequently asked or the do it yourself. And then someone made a thread on how do I, convert from cable to hydro, like the first time somebody did that. And so it was this really cool environment where you could talk at a relatively fast speed. And then they came out with the instant messengers of DMs, private, it was PMs.
Yeah,
PMs
right.
before on like NWP and things like that. And the influence became broader. You could be influenced by people from anywhere. You could
And then you could communicate directly
You
with
could
those people by
communicate
a
directly
private
with them.
message.
And it was a really beautiful community. I really believe that it was. It was a fantastic community. But that's also when we started evolving into more people feeling comfortable trolling,
Mm-hmm.
ruining people's threads, being real fucked up with their answers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of, hey, you've got to take the time to click on above where we have these questions answered. It was just like, you lazy piece of shit, go look. There's always
Yeah.
been the people who did that.
Sure, sure.
And you know, over the years, I think the good that came from it far outweighs the bad. But you started to have this entire evolution where people stopped wanting to wait because of the speed at which things were moving.
Yeah,
People
some of
stopped
those.
wanting to
Do you
wait.
remember some of those threads? They would just like you would tune in,
Yes.
and it would be like at the bottom or on to page 4,
Yes.
and you're just like, wow, things are moving fast, right?
Yes. You
And
go
then
on
so
an
it was-
hour later and it's on page 12 and you're like, fuck, and you'd have to like scroll back and to answer people's questions, you know?
Yeah,
It was crazy, but I think that it was amazing because anyone who had, you know, the ability to could put up photos of an event and say, did you guys see this car? Who owned this hatch? Who owned this whatever? And it'd be like, oh, that's mine, dude. It's crazy. Next time we have a meet, introduce yourself. And so some people's friendships to this day
Mm-hmm.
came from this time of forums, which was the beginning of social media. And then, of course, you know, there was, I mean, I don't know, Friendster was probably happening around the same time. Friendster, music was Napster, and then MySpace, and that kind of stuff started to come into fruition. But, you know, and that's like a whole different realm, but conceptually the same thing. People can talk about any music, anything, any culture, anything they want, and get to know each other and kind of connect people. And the good from it started to have to give room for the bad from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to this point where everything got faster and faster, and social media started to become more powerful. So the forums phased themselves out because you had the social networks,
Yeah.
the Facebook and the Instagram. I mean, MySpace and then Facebook and Instagram, which are like Facebook and Instagram are, at least for the time being, they don't look like they're going anywhere.
No, they're strong.
It's just part of like, it's like one of those things that's just, there'll be something new, of course, but it doesn't seem likely that those will ever leave. Are there other search engines than Google? Yes. Do millions of people use other search engines than Google? Yes. But Google is used by billions every second. So it's like, is there going to be another one? Yes. Is Google going to go away? Probably never.
Not very easily, if
No.
anything.
Right? So it's just one of those things. And as we get to the point where we are now, we have to really take the time to decide for ourselves what is good and what is bad and what we should and what we should not allow to influence us. So when we come back, we'll really get into present day. All right? We'll see you guys in a moment. Think Bigger podcast. This is a branch of the Think Bigger project that is a brand and a movement and an ideology that was created to better the community and the culture around it. How you behave in your relationships, how you build a car, how you do anything comes from the way that you think. And if you can start there, then everything else will follow.
All right, so we're back and we're talking about digital media and the evolution. So kind of the part that we're at right now, I guess we would be talking about current day.
Yeah.
And current day is exciting, scary, interesting, much different than the way that I was brought up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a learning curve, and it's pretty cool. You know, the fact that you could attend an event and you could be live streaming at that event.
Live, like real time, anyone in
We
the
sound
world.
so old when we're talking about this.
It's true, but I mean,
so
you guys,
true.
you know, okay, I'm like that. I'm always talking about how we need to really be grateful for what it is and be, you know, excited about it. But I mean, it's totally true. We went from waiting a month, 2, 3, 6 months for your vehicle or content that you were interested in, an event that you went to come out in a magazine, to now maybe a day or two on the forums, and then the expansion of the topics and the type of people and the type of things they could say and
Right.
share.
And now, let's just use like Rodriguez for an example, right? Because he was one of the first people that shot my car
Okay.
back in the day. I've known him for a long time, but now it's like, oh, I follow him, or I follow Honda Tuning or Super Street on my social media, and oh look, I see that they're online and they're live. You can click that and you could literally see, if you're not at the event, you are
Right.
now at the event.
Right.
And you can interact with the people or the person and literally speaking
Yes,
directly to them,
in real time.
answering questions, asking them to, hey, can you go back
Oh yeah,
to
that car you just passed, go back to
I
it.
really wanted to see the steering wheel quick release bolt.
Yes.
Like you could go, and if he's cool with it, oh yeah, that we got some
Yeah,
time.
isn't that?
Let me show you this.
I think that's
the owner
so
of the
cool.
car's right here. Hey, tell us more about that.
Yes.
That steering wheel quick release bolt.
Yes.
That this guy, Joe Blow Schmo, is asking me about right now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
how crazy is that to be able to get that kind of
dude,
instant gratification?
It is the craziest thing ever. And I don't care if we sound old, because I think retaining the awe for the ability and the power is actually super crucial, because when you just sort of brush it off, that's what I believe is very dangerous. Like, okay, so for example, we're talking about in the context, like we're talking about evolution and influence, right? The word influence, especially in this day and age with influencers, which are basically people who have been able to create for themselves a large following, but what the fuck are they actually influencing you to do, right? Most of the biggest reality stars are influencing you to act like a piece of shit, okay? To be very honest with you, all right?
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. When you use it like that, tech and an event that's across the country that you couldn't go to, maybe SEMA, which is private to the public, and you can't just be there, then you get to see all of this media uploaded within hours or even minutes or seconds for the live stream stuff. But you have these like fully edited and curated video productions that, if you couldn't be somewhere, are up so fast, and it gives you this very real thing. But nothing's faster than live streaming, real time. I do them on my channel. We mentioned that for all of you guys that are here on Car Talk that follow me personally. I mean, I remember one the other day where there was only a dozen people, right? It was a weird time of day that I had some time, and I sat down, and out of a dozen people, let's literally use the 12, there was someone from Canada, India, Russia, Belgium, London, Wales, and like
America?
The last 2 or 3 were from America. Yeah. But at one point, out of 12 people, there were 9 countries.
Yeah.
And that person might have only been in there a minute or two, but I said, hey, your screen name, something about it didn't seem, and I asked, maybe and everyone was checking in. Yeah. And I'm naming these countries, and I do this all the time, and I still trip out that there's somebody 12,000 miles away across the biggest body of water, and they are asking me a question. I think Instagram Live is maybe a 10-second delay.
Okay.
But they can hear me. I think the 10 seconds is a laughable thing for what we're talking about here. We're talking about effectively, real-time conversation, right? And I'm sure they're going to come up with a way where you could have a bunch of little split screens, so you're effectively FaceTiming that many people. But you're talking about countries all over the world, and we're all in this live stream pretty much because of cars, and we can talk about cars or talk about something else. Right there in real time, you get to have this global community, and you guys can help, or people hurt each other with the things they say about people's children and body positivity, and people tear each other down. But what I'm saying is, you guys, is that the evolution and the influence of it, there is a power to it that I think we have to keep in our minds, because that's where we can use that power for good, or we can be indifferent and just be that person who has a TV show or a channel, and they just act like a buffoon, and they're just like, well, I'm just being me. And that's a very convenient kind of way to say you have all of these people you influence, but your convenient answer is, well, I'm just going to be me. They don't have to be like that. right? And so with the automotive community, you guys, we have the ability to help each other and learn from each other at a rate, and on a scale that I think is absolutely incredible, right? I mean, like, let's take for example, Rywire, right? How about in the last month? Let's just the last 30 days. What countries have you shipped to?
Well, David would probably be able to answer that a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
Okay, what were the people who contact
yeah.
Ryan at Rywire.com
Uh-huh.
email wise?
Yes.
What countries?
Well, United States is definitely our most popular. But yeah, like all over the place. South America. Um, we just did like a couple packages to Japan. Um,
Australia.
oh yeah, Australia like
They
daily
they
probably.
build the craziest cars
Yeah.
in Australia.
Australia's like daily, Canada's daily. Um, a lot like the UK
Mhm.
is almost daily.
Yeah.
And that surrounding area.
Dude, and you guys,
But and then random places, like
dude, random
like
places.
Chile and this
Yeah,
place
yeah,
and
yeah,
that
yeah.
place. You're just like, oh, okay, well maybe we. And then you look it up and like, oh, I have shipped here before. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's the craziest
Yeah,
thing.
it's so cool. Like there's a couple of guys from Brazil, Chile, Portugal that hop in the live streams.
Hmm.
But the Indonesians, because
Yeah.
Ryan and I we're in Indonesia years ago, and they still keep in touch. Like the
Yeah.
Indonesian car community, shout out to all of those guys. They're hardcore.
Yeah.
Like they are hardcore.
There's definitely
Guys from Kuala Lumpur,
Yeah.
Malaysia. Oh, dude.
Every place that I visited, I always get more orders from that.
From that, yeah. And that's the coolest thing. So I mean, even we didn't even talk about email, but it's like electronic mail. Before, how much would it cost? You have to write this physical letter, mail it. Could you afford to put the stamp, or however much it costs? Could it get lost or damaged? Now you can send an email and correspond with someone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
I'm
amazing.
I'm right here. I'm texting. I mean,
Our phones get emails like texts.
I even remember, like when I first met some of the guys from Japan,
Yes.
it wasn't like a text message away.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like
It was, I'll see you next year at TAS.
Yeah, like I'll see you, maybe I'll see, whatever. And then it wasn't just like a text. It was like, oh, that's more expensive. It's more minutes. It's this,
Yes,
it's that.
yes,
And
yes,
then,
yes.
over the years, it's like, oh, well, now I can just text them.
Yeah.
Because it was before, it was like there was like certain messenger services or like
Yes.
workarounds. Like, oh, I can go online and I can DM you through like Honda Tech.
Well, now they text you and say we're arriving next week, and you got to clean out your house so that you
Yeah.
come stay.
I know, but then it's just like literally, I was talking to Yasu this morning
Yeah.
from Japan, and it's just text message,
Just text message.
and it just couldn't be more easy. And that was in only the last like 6-7 years,
Right.
7-8 years maybe. That it's just literally a text message away.
Yeah.
Versus the kind of workarounds to not
Yeah.
have to like pay for that on your service.
Yeah. Or let's only talk via email.
Yeah.
Because
it's free.
It's free, yeah. But now it's just easy.
Just
like
everything's
if you
open.
use an iPhone iMessage, it just uses the internet.
Yeah, you just
and you just send it. But I mean, I think that you know me, I tend to be philosophical, and I think that I like to focus on the power of it, because as long as you are conscious of the power of it and the influence of it, both ways, either the way you influence others or the way others can influence you in real time, as long as we stay conscious of that, I believe that we can be okay, because we will take pride in the influence we may be having on others, and we are also aware and not blind to the influence that another is having on us,
Yeah.
right? And so companies like Rywire that have the ability to communicate with people all over the world and provide a product, myself to provide a mindset and a conversation and a place of peace and solace, with my personal podcast and my page, because when I was doing COVID quarantine live streams and stuff, that's a way that cars brought us together, but the people there, half the time we weren't talking about cars because people needed a place to feel connected to someone. And
because
people
of what was
message
going
me
on in the world.
even to this day,
Yeah.
people are like, you don't understand, having the ability to have a conversation or communicate with someone like yourself, who I only knew of you in magazines. And I still feel the same way when I meet people like Oscar Jackson Sr.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the evolution of things to get to a point where someone whose name I saw stamped on superchargers that we all aspired to have,
Mm-hmm.
and then now the man's like my dad, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
get to communicate like almost like a familial kind of environment.
Yeah.
That type of stuff, I believe is because of the power of media, social media, and the speed at which it moves and the influence that people can have on each other. And, Ryan and I are able to have this with you. You guys can watch this and pause it and leave a comment about what we're saying. It's on a platform like YouTube where you're busy for a day, a week, a month, a year, and you can come back and
And
watch
revisit
this
it, no
and
problem.
then visit us on. You can call Rywire for a product. You can email Ryan. You can DM on his IG and myself, and we can communicate using these types of advancements of media, now social media and the internet. So I think the evolution and the influence of it to where we are today is, I don't think, should ever be understated. Like,
Yeah,
it is
and
profound.
I mean, I can only imagine what the next step would be. Like, I mean, how much faster could we get, and how
I mean,
much
that's what
more?
5G, 5G is going to make everything move faster and do more, and the volume and resolution and et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
that's true. The
Crazy.
clarity can improve. Like you were saying, like that 10-second buffer. I mean, not that it needs to, but that in theory can
Sure. Oh,
improve.
yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean,
it
you're
can.
talking about recording in now 5K, and at 5G speeds, you're supposed to be able to send that within minutes.
Yeah,
Like, that's
I
fucking
mean,
wild.
you can hear a pin drop across the room,
Yep.
maybe, and like
Yep.
just that's wild, dude.
And that's where I go back to, we have to be careful with that, that we need to be able to help each other and influence each other in a positive way. And so, with Car Talk, us being able to have this conversation with you guys and you being able to comment, we can read your comment, respond to it, suggestions for episodes, we can take them and create that, and then you get to watch and be like, I helped make that episode happen.
Yeah, if you guys have good,
Yes,
suggestions on what you would like us to talk
we
about,
will read it.
things that maybe you don't know about that you think that we might
Right,
be able
right.
to shed some light on,
Yes.
interesting, fun stuff. Like
Yes.
I'm always down to hear, cool ideas for
Yeah.
sure.
If you agree, if you disagree, if you love, if you hate it, I mean, be an adult, share it in an intelligent fashion. We can respond to that too. I mean, that's where the maturity and the positivity, and I think the power in a good way, of what media has evolved into. That's where we are. So once again, you guys, we appreciate you being with us on another episode of Car Talk. Like Ryan was just saying, share in the comments, message us, email us, so that we can, take your guys' ideas and suggestions and create episodes for you. Right? So
I like it.
there it is, you guys. Thank you again, and we'll see you on another episode of Car Talk.